Teleportation is a normal occurrence in sci-fi movies. It's as easy as putting a location on a map and appearing where you want. And when it's time to return,
Scotty, beam us up fast.
simply turn on your location, call home and get teleported back. Seems cool and convenient when you think about it. And it could be terrifying if that technology falls into the wrong hands. But while it seems human teleportation currently exists only in science fiction, teleportation is really quite possible in the subatomic world of quantum mechanics. In 2019, scientists confirmed that information could be passed between photons on computer chips, even when the photons were not physically linked. This seems like a groundbreaking discovery that might lead to more advanced experiments. But in a world currently filled with hundreds of mysterious traceless disappearances, it leaves you to wonder if this technology or something far worse is currently being used, randomly targeting people in various destinations. If not, then how would you explain the amount of mysterious vanishing cases that have happened within several centuries, with no clues left behind for modern forensics to trace? In this video we'll be sharing some of the most unexplainable vanishing tales. Some of the victims were lucky enough to be alive to share a fraction of the details of what happened. Some weren't so lucky, carrying their bizarre tales with them into another world. The Bennington Triangle is an area of southwestern Vermont in which there have been a series of strange cases of vanishings. A peak of famous cases happened around the 40s, which started with Mitty Rivers. On the morning of November 12, 1945, 74-year-old Rivers was out hunting with his son-in-law and 3 other companions around the Glastonbury Mountain. After a successful hunt, the men decided to head back to their cabin using the trail road area. Mitty, who was the most experienced with the area, was leading the group, and at a point he separated from the group when they approached a fork road, claiming he would be back for lunch after completing a short distance. He never made it back for lunch, and the group headed out to look for him around 3 p.m. No remains of Mitty were ever found, just an unused shell case by the river. The most famous Bennington Triangle case was that of Paula Weldon, which happened a year later on December 1, 1946. 18-year-old Paula, who was a sophomore at Bennington College, went hiking on a long trail. Many people saw her leave, including her roommate, Elizabeth Johnson, who she had told about taking a long walk after studying. While she was on the walk, she was closely followed by an elderly couple. According to them, she turned a corner to the trail. By the time they reached the corner, there was no sign of her, almost as if she vanished. An extensive search was conducted, and a reward of $5,000 was put out. But there was simply no trace of Paula Weldon. The strangest of the Bennington Triangle cases happened exactly 3 years later on December 1, 1949. James E. Tedford, a veteran and resident of the Bennington Soldiers' Home, had been in St. Albans visiting relatives. They accompanied him to the local bus station as he was scheduled to travel back to Bennington. Somewhere between the last bus stop and Bennington, he seemed to just vanish from the bus. 14 passengers including the driver all testified to seeing James sleeping at the back seat by himself, but when the bus reached Bennington, James was nowhere to be found, and not a single passenger saw him leave. His belongings were still in the luggage rack, and an open bus timetable was on his vacant seat. What could be responsible for these occurrences? Long before these popular cases, the Native Americans spoke of the land being cursed and refused to travel anywhere near the mountains, claiming they had seen people vanish before their eyes and never return. They also spoke of an enchanted stone that wanders this same area, which opens up and swallows a person whole if they venture too close. Earlier accounts also mentioned strange noises and odors coming from the mountains. So after many years, when the town of Glastonbury was formed, which was close to the Bennington Mountains, these mysterious incidents persisted. Early in the 19th century, 2 horses guiding a stagecoach which was carrying lots of passengers on a remote path down the mountains, stopped abruptly. The driver came down to inspect amidst a heavy downpour, and saw strange tracks on the path. The horses were terrified to approach for some reason, and everyone in the stagecoach hurtled together in fear till the rain subsided. This led to the tale of the Bennington Monster, which was quite famous at the time. Could the enchanted stone and this monster be linked in some way? But could all the disappearances just be a strange coincidence? And those who got missing just got lost and simply couldn't find their way back again? American national parks serve as a great getaway from all the noise and complications that the big cities can bring. It is highly unlikely that visitors and tourists are looking to get caught up in some yet-to-be-uncovered technology that takes them to another destination, but this has been the case for hundreds of victims in the past. With only a handful of people found alive who give a vague description of what happened. Other victims, however, were found dead. But what is strange is that all the dead victims all share strange things in common as to how they were found. Their corpses showed that there was no struggles, their clothes remained intact with no signs of animal predation, and they were found where it was difficult or impossible to reach by foot. These outlier cases in American and Canadian national parks led David Paul Ides, a former police officer, to start a movement called Missing 411, covering missing cases along Canada and America. Some cases were so bizarre that witnesses testified to victims physically vanishing before their eyes. Like the mysterious case of Catherine Van Alst that happened at Devil Dens Park, located in Arkansas. 8-year-old Catherine was playing in the creek near her family's campsite. Her father and brother were right beside her and basically looked away for a moment to look back and find out she was gone. They thought she had gone back to the campsite that was only a stone throw away, so they called out to her, but she did not reply. They searched for her frantically and later involved park officials. The search went on for 6 days as park officials and volunteers methodically swept the area for several square miles, but found no clue of her. A team of the search party later saw little Catherine casually waving at them from the entrance of the cave and simply uttered, "Here I am." What makes the incident mind-boggling was that she was spookily calm when they saw her, still wearing her bathing suit, and still had no shoes on. Another mystery was that the area had been searched thoroughly before. It was 7 air miles away from where she was lost, and 600 feet high. Witnesses mentioned her feet were swollen, but given that there were jagged rocks surrounding the area, it should have been far worse. Even an adult would have found that terrain hard to navigate, let alone an 8-year-old who didn't have shoes on. She had vague recollection of the incident, and she said she even called out to the rescuers at some point, but they couldn't see or hear her. A similar incident happened to Danny Philippidis, a Canadian firefighter, on the 7th of February 2018, who was on an annual ski trip with his friends at Lake Placid, New York. At a point, Philippidis told his friends he'll ski down Whiteface Mountain to retrieve his phone that he had left in the car. After waiting on him for some hours, they realized that something was wrong, and that's when the search began. Days went on and no trace of Philippidis was found at Whiteface Mountain or anywhere else around New York. On the 7th day, however, Philippidis called his wife on a phone all the way from Sacramento, California, over 4,500 kilometers from his previous destination. He was without any form of ID, and he still had his winter outfit on. In his own testimony, he sounded unsure of the whole incident.
I'm assuming, I hailed or, put my arm up or something like that just to hail a ride back into town. It was a truck.
Okay. Like a transport?
Like a transport.
Okay.
And I don't know if I said anything. I don't really recall having, I'm just assuming that I hailed a ride, and I'm not certain if I said anything, but I would assume that I must have said, you can get a ride or something.
Both Danny and Catherine's story are quite similar to many others where the missing were thankfully found. Is it just a big coincidence, or were they victims of some kind of unknown force? This all reminds me of an Irish folklore called the Stray Sod. There are many myths and legends that come from Ireland, with a whole lot of mythical creatures to back them up. Leprechauns, fairies, banshees, just to name a few. But there's one particular Irish folklore that strikes a resemblance to many of the stories that we've covered in this episode. And that is the myth of the Stray Sod. In fact, a certain war veteran named Captain Dermot A. McManus set out to convince scholars who were regarding the Stray Sod tales as mere myths. He claimed such incidents had happened to people whom he knew at that time directly or indirectly. One of such stories was that of Reverend Mr. Harris. In the summer of 1916, Reverend Harris allegedly went on a trip to go tend to a very sick man who lived close by. It was only a 7-mile walk, which he had taken many times before, so he told his wife he would be back within 2 hours and headed off. To make sure of his word, the Reverend decided to take a shortcut. So he took a gate that leads through a field expecting to find a stile, which is like a ladder. This would help him to get to the other side where the path would continue. He had taken this shortcut on many occasions before, so it was with some surprise that he reached the other side of the field and found no sign of the stile. In fact, he could not even see any evidence of the path or the gate he just passed to enter the field. He searched the field for hours without any sign of the gate, the path, or the stile. Indeed, no way out of the field at all. The panic grew within him with every passing moment. Until at one point things suddenly returned to normal just as quickly as they had derailed. The path and gate appeared again, and he found himself standing right next to the stile he had been searching for in vain. Dermot McManus had a lot of eerie tales, including one that had a resemblance to Catherine Van Alst's disappearance, even though both incidents happened decades apart. It was the story of a housekeeper at a sprawling estate in the Irish countryside. One evening she decided to take a walk back to her own village to visit her family, a walk that took her through an area with a hill called Lissard Ford, which was known to locals as a place where fairies dwelled. The woman passed through without incident and headed down the hill, yet she suddenly blinked and found herself walking the opposite way, back up the hill. For hours she was stuck there like this, so it was with relief that she saw a search party approaching to look for her, but when she shouted to them and waved her hands, they could not see her. This would go on for another hour before whatever spell had been cast was lifted, and she was able to continue on her way, and she was eventually found. And yes, she was found somewhere the search party had previously covered. There are numerous other reports of this phenomenon happening outside of Ireland and America. For instance, in Finnish folklore, there is what is called metsinpito, meaning forest cover, which like the stray sot is a magical force produced by forest spirits that causes people to not only become lost, but to also become invisible to other people looking for them. In 2022, there were over 100 cases of berry pickers getting lost in Finland, with the highest cases occurring in Lapland. The Lapland Police Department said, missing people were typically discovered 4 to 5 hours after they are first reported missing. In most cases during summer, majority of people reported missing are usually berry pickers, but hikers and the elderly can also become lost. Marja Hiitanen, a neuropsychologist at the Helsinki University Hospital, stated that the general feeling of going in circles when lost is real, but the reason for this is not fully understood. One hypothesis suggests that moving in a circle is connected to the human balance system. She further concluded that it is believed that small errors in balance perception would accumulate while walking forward, leading to one going in circles. Every day, people get lost in the woods. Unfortunately, some are never found. Some leave behind clues that suggest animal or human attacks, and the cause of their deaths are easily identified. But others leave behind no known clues or traces of any kind to suggest there was a struggle. They just simply dematerialize while walking on a path. Will these mysteries be solved one day? We'll never know. But if it does, be sure to click the notification bell so you'll be the first to know. Please leave a like as well and let me know what you think about these strange events in the comment below. Thank you for watching. And be careful if you are taking a walk in the woods.